Recording in progress. Here we go. All right, welcome to Wapiti Live Q&A for October 25th. Kind of can't believe October is almost over. Oh, does anybody feel like September was just September 1st, blink an eye, and here we are, end of October?
It's been like this since January for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they they say the older we get, the faster the years go by.
You wait till you get my age, and
Oh, well, the quality of the room is about to go downhill with the next person that I'm admitting. Yeah.
oh, that's funny.
Just kidding. Oh, dang, and that was recorded too. So if he watches the replay,
Yeah.
Yeah.
oops,
Oops.
messed up on that one.
There
So
it goes.
sorry about that, Larry.
Oh, I haven't been hearing you. I don't know what you were sorry about.
Well, you wouldn't have because you were in the waiting room and I was sitting there talking, and all of a sudden I clicked to admit you, and I said, "Well, guys, the quality of the room is about to go down with the person I'm admitting." And it popped up with a black screen and said Larry Gill, and you were the guys
You're
just.
right about that. The quality just went down.
So, all right, so let's jump into tonight's topic. I know it leaves a lot when all I put was why, because we're going to go a lot of different avenues tonight. And really, what sparked this was I've listened to a couple of podcasts this week, and also, on social media and seeing a lot. And the first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to jump on a soapbox here and ask the question, why in today's society do so many people hunt for social media acceptance and are fearful to post their harvests? I mean, a lot of the Idaho pages, you'll see so many people that it's not the biggest one on the mountain, but it's meat in the
Exactly.
freezer. And I'm like, who gives a rat's ass? If you harvest something and you're proud of it,
Then you're proud of it.
post it. But it's funny too, because you go through the comments and there's so many people. Congratulations, you shot a fork and horn. What, are you afraid to let them grow for a couple of years? And the people are like, I was hunting in a 2 point only unit.
Yeah.
Well, then you could have found a larger fork and horn. And it's like, why? I mean, in one of the podcasts I was listening it was the Western Huntsman podcast, and it was Jim Huntsman, and he was talking to James Nash of Six Ranch podcast and Six Ranch Outfitters, and they're both friends of mine, and I have the utmost respect for James. And he was on the podcast, and he was basically saying, you know what, social media today and online influencers are lying to people. They're setting up expectations, and you'll see people, and here's the animal right here, and instead of sitting right up here proud, they're like all the way back here, making that thing look huge. And it's my like, why did we evolve into this? Why did we start hunting for social media acceptance? I don't understand it. I don't get it. I don't agree with it. So, but okay, there's my little soapbox rant.
Well, I
So,
just saw I just saw a thing the other day on Facebook. A guy shot a bear, and someone commented, "Wow, that thing barely had the milk off its lips."
yeah.
Like, oh wow.
I remember, 2 years ago, I was doing a podcast, and somebody actually asked me the question if social media has helped or hurt the hunting industry. And my response was that it has absolutely hurt the hunting industry because you have people like that. We have these people that will go on and just speak negatively. I mean, we're getting attacked enough from anti-hunting groups and everything else. We don't need to be doing that stuff within our ranks. But they asked me to expand, and I said, there's so many keyboard warriors that are sitting in the basement of their mom and dad's house commenting and being rude to people. And you know what this world needs is more punches in the face.
Well,
So, I mean, if you're brave enough to make that comment on a keyboard to me, then you should be brave enough to come and say that to my face. So,
I agree.
and also, if you don't have something positive to say to somebody, it's okay to scroll right by that post and not say anything at all. Just keep your opinions to yourself. So, but yeah, it's getting ridiculous, Jim. Yeah, I see that on so many posts. You know, there was somebody that posted their first deer and it was a doe, and people were like, "Congratulations! Why did you shoot it in the neck?" Who gives a crap? He harvested the animal, he put it down, he recovered it. You don't know the situation. I mean, he could have been aiming behind the shoulder for the perfect shot, but first game animal ever, his emotions could have just been jumping like Mexican jumping beans, and he jerked the trigger. He's lucky he didn't blow a leg off and wound the thing and everything else. Wow. Can you guys hear her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all
Somebody
right.
went in.
Yeah, this is the cat that adopted us 1st of September. So 1st of September? Yeah, 1st of September. And so she has a great big splint on right now because she has a broken leg, and this is week number 6 with the splint. So she's a little peg leg Annie, but yeah, she's getting nursed back to health and getting recovered and putting on weight. She was pretty emancipated when she found us. So, but we've been nursing her. Don't
hey, I'm
tell
kind of
anybody.
with you on that one.
Yeah,
Wow.
don't tell
Oh,
anybody, but Liz is actually growing kind of fond of her. So we'll keep
Sounds
that one
like
as a
the,
secret. I know I'm
sounds like
safe.
ready for a pain pill.
What's that?
The meowing sounds like the cat needs a pain pill.
No, the cat needs my lap because it's a nightly routine where when winding down and sitting on the couch, she is stretched out on my lap. And so she's letting me know right now that I'm not downstairs sitting on the couch so that she can sprawl out on my lap. So, all right. So why? One of the other topics that I heard on one of the podcasts was, they were talking about what this individual felt was the number one thing that elk hunters needed to really be truly effective out in the elk woods. And they gave examples. Is it proficiency with your weapon? Is it top dollar camo? Is it gear? And the guy, I loved his response. He goes, you know what? You could go out with a 25-year-old bow, blue jeans, and a flannel shirt if you had elk knowledge, if you understand elk and have the knowledge of what they do and why they do it and all that kind of stuff. And that's what evolved kind of into tonight. At first I was like, okay, I'm doing a why. And it was going to be, why do elk do what they do? And then with all this other crap, I was like, nope, I'm just changing to why, because I want to jump on my soapbox for a little bit and just kind of spoo about things that I'm seeing that I don't agree with. So
In 2 weeks it'll be why not?
exactly. So, but yeah, so why? And one of the things they were talking about, the person, so, and it's called Western Rookies Podcast. They're guys from the east side of the U.S., so they come out west each year to hunt elk, and it was interesting because he and the guys he hunts with, I think they've been coming out 6 or 7 years now. And so they're kind of starting to figure things out. They're starting to hunt some of the same areas, but he's like, man, he goes, some of these Western states have become so popular that, God, it's not even drawing the tag every year anymore for general tags. It's turning into every couple of years, or some states it's even every 3 to 4 years. And so if you think about what we've talked about with the average one elk every 5 to 7 years, that's 5 to 7 years of straight elk hunting. Now, if you're only drawing a tag every third or fourth year, man, how many years are you going in between elk? And I agree 100% with one of the things that they said is the best knowledge you can obtain is by time in the field in interactions with the elk. But one of the questions that really sparked the why was they were basically talking about elk in the morning transitioning from their feeding area to their bedding grounds. And the podcast host was like, man, he goes, but then they just got quiet and shut up and we couldn't. And I'm, of course, I'm just sitting there driving, screaming out the answers. And I don't think he heard me. So, because I wasn't on the podcast, but I was still answering his questions anyways. So, but the reason is so the first why do elk get quiet when they get near their bedding area? And the reason of that is it's a protective measure. So, we've talked about it before. Um, you know, well, hold on. I'm gonna hit that on the next one. But the reason they get quiet is because they don't want anything to pinpoint exactly where they are bedded down. Because if they're bugling all the way to where they're bedded down, predators are going to be able to pinpoint exactly where they are. And if those elk are bedded down and they're flat out asleep, I mean, head down on the ground sleeping, and I mean, predators are pretty dang stealthy anyways. Well, that's just setting them up for becoming a meal for that predator. So it's a defense mechanism and a survival mechanism, and that's why they go quiet. Now, usually once they go quiet, they can travel anywhere from 2, 3, 4, 500 additional yards before they bed down. So that's one very important thing when you're out there. And if you're listening to a herd and transitioning, when they go quiet, then you start taking a look going, okay, where do I think they are going to bed down? And elk typically will bed down about a third of the way down off the top of the mountain. And if you can find benches in that region, you're golden. That's where they're going to bed down. The reason being, and a lot of times, if you notice, the third of the way down off the top of the mountain, a lot of times is pretty close to the edge of the tree line and it's open above. But the nice thing is those mountain thermals at that point when they're bedding down are coming uphill, so they can catch scent of anything underneath in the trees. But with the edge of that tree line, they have line of sight above, and so it gives them a lot of protection. The reason they like benches is because on benches that time of day, especially in dark timber, wind swirls really, really hard. And so it does a few things. With the swirling wind, it confuses predators because the predators can't really lock in exactly where they're bedded down. But also, too, that swirling wind really gets them a good chance to sniff everything around them. And so they can basically cover a lot of directions with their nose, with their sight, and ears. So, okay. So that's the first why. The second why, and it kind of couples with that transition, why do elk always move with the wind in their nose? And that's simply because they are scent checking ahead of them for any potential dangers. And that's why a lot of times in the morning when they're transitioning, if you'll notice, about the time they start getting quiet is about the time that, one, we already know they're close to their bedding area, but two, that's about the time that thermals really start changing too. They may not change and be consistent, but they will change enough that they start blowing uphill. Now what's happening is these elk are smelling their back trail because all the way up, the wind's been in their nose. They're smelling everything in front. Then they start settling down and all of a sudden that wind changes. They can stop, point their nose downhill, smell their back trail. Okay, is anything following? Nope. Okay, we can start settling down and finding a place to bed down. Yep, we do have danger behind us. We need to go to the alternative bedding area or maybe the second alternative bedding area. They have the constant options. They always have, we've talked about having hunting plans A, B, C, D, three, all the way through. Elk have the same thing. They have their bedding zones. They have their preferred bedding zones, but they have backup bedding zones also in case there's danger. That's why in the morning you do not want to be right directly below chasing elk uphill. One, because they are a heck of a lot more adaptive getting up that hill than we are. And two, if that thermal changes, your morning's done. You just spent a lot of time gaining that elevation for nothing. Okay. With me so far? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here's one I haven't talked about before. So we talk about when you get into a breeding area, a breeding zone, that you will find rubs from the current year and previous years. But here's the thing. Why would the elk return back to that area if the herd bull got killed in that area the year before?
Habit.
Nope. Who leads the herd? Who leads the groups?
Oh,
Mama cow.
yeah.
Matriarch, lead cow. Lead cow is the one that actually, so the year before she was in there with the herd bull because that's where she has been going since she was a little calf. And since she became, the lead cow, she's the one that's actually choosing that spot and going to that spot. Even though she may have been down lower and, the bull came down and rounded her up and off she went. That's why, now here's kind of the cool thing. You guys have heard me talk about how younger bulls can go down and spend all the energy to gather the cows. And then that lead cow leads her to that breeding area. That herd bull that has been in that area for the last 3, 4, 5 years, he knows right where to go. Because he knows that lead cow and the group of cows are going to come right to that area. So then he goes in, beats up on the younger bull, takes the cows. That's why you can see similar rubs from previous years, similar heights or this or that. I mean, you are going to have variations in antler growth depending on, amount of moisture, amount of feed, minerals in the area, and all that kind of stuff. That lead cow, and that's why always when they're moving, the lead cow is up there up front and the bull is in the back. And that leads into the next why. Why is the bull always at the back of the herd? We've talked about this one before.
I would think protection.
So think about it. We talked about it earlier. Elk move with the wind in their nose. So that lead cow, they're walking with the wind in the nose. That bull in the back, he is able to scent check every single cow that is moving in front of him because of that thermal blowing down. That is why a lot of times in the herds, when they're on the move, that is generally why the bull is in the back. Now, the cases that doesn't happen is if the elk got spooked or bumped out of their beds or something, because then it's a free-for-all. There is no hierarchy. They're not really in the chain and all that kind of stuff. That's why, as those cows are moving up, they're spread out a little bit. That's why you'll see that bull in the back kind of do. It almost appears like he's dogging them or herding them. He's really not. He's just moving back and forth from outer edge to outer edge, scent checking those cows, waiting for the smell of that cow coming into estrus to hit his nose. Tonight's going to be a lot of useless little tips like this. So
Not so useless. Not so useless.
So, but the other thing to note too about the lead cow, before we really move on, is the lead cow is the one that actually knows their migration routes. that leads them to their wintering grounds, that leads them to the calving grounds, and all that kind of stuff. What's interesting though is within those nursery groups, when they're dropping calves, you can have multiple lead cows that when the breakup happens for the rut, then they become lead cow in each of those groups. But in that nursery group, even though there's lead cows on others, there's still always one main matriarch. And it's amazing if you ever get to see the herd dynamics like that. Greg, have you ever been up to the elk feeding in McCall?
Not McCall, but up around Sun Valley Ketchum, yes.
Okay, Sun Valley Ketchum. So you're out there and you're looking at the herd. Have you ever sat there and looked out and go, holy crap, that is a huge cow. God, look at how big she is.
I'm just amazed at the numbers.
But that wow cow, that is the matriarch. And I mean, she is massive. Very, very big. So, okay. This one is I guess this why kind of goes back to what we were first talking about with social media acceptance. There are a lot of individuals out there, and it seems like they come from Wyoming a lot. But you will hear people that will harvest a bull, and they're like, "Holy crap, that bull was 900 pounds." Our packs were 100, 125 pounds per quarter. Hog wash. Your weight on an elk is in guts, hide, and bones. That's where a majority of the weight is. A good, mature 6-point bull, good, mature bull, how much do you guys think 4 quarters and loose meat weigh on a good, mature bull?
Boned or not?
Bone in quarters.
4 quarters, the hind quarters will probably be 80 pounds. Front quarters, maybe 60, 70 pounds, my guess.
Okay, but total weight. If you were to take all 4 quarters and loose meat in and hang it on a scale from a good mature bull, bone in quarters and loose meat.
250.
320.
I was gonna say 350.
The average is about 350 pounds. Average, which means if you have 350 pounds of hanging meat, that bull's live weight on the hoof is roughly 6 to 625 pounds. I know it sure feels a lot heavier when it's on your back.
And a cow would be more like 400 to 500 pounds
On the hoof,
on
yeah.
the hoof.
Yeah, cow with the hanging weight, you're probably in that 280 range, 250 to 280. So, because that was the conversation that was sitting there having, and it's like, okay, if you shot a 900-pound elk and you only have 350 pounds,
Something's wrong.
you only have 36% of the weight.
You left a quarter behind.
At least.
350, 900 pounds. You're telling me that there was 550 pounds of guts and hide that you left on the mountain?
That's still a lot of meat, though. 350 pounds. I mean, really. I mean, come on.
Oh, absolutely. Now, of course, you got out of that 350, you got to take the bone weight out too,
Oh, yeah.
because you have bone in quarters. So, okay. How many of you guys have seen, and this might make you guys think twice about this. How many of you guys have seen pictures of people packing out an elk quarter and there's the lower half of the leg with the hoof?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Why?
Yep.
Why? Because if you actually understood what happened on that lower part of the leg, elk will urinate, ejaculate, all kinds of stuff on those lower parts of the leg.
Cut it off.
Why on earth do you want to pack that with the clean meat that you just took? Plus, that that's another 10 to 15 pounds on each one.
Makes no sense.
We left the whole
No.
leg. We carried out the 4/4 with the full leg because we didn't want to spend time in the grizzly area
Yeah.
to get those cut off. And we
Okay.
just quartered out, loaded them, and got out of there.
Do you know how long it takes to cut those legs off?
Not really that long, but we
3
didn't want to
minutes.
give it a chance.
3 minutes. Front legs are very, very easy because front legs, you can actually take them, bend them, and then you can feel right here in the elbow, you will feel a seam. So as soon as you open that hide, you take your knife and you pop that open, all of a sudden you will see the two ball joints, you will see a tendon right in there. You take the tip of your knife, you cut that, and then you have a tendon here and a tendon here, and that thing just falls off, and then you have an inner tendon to cut. Now the tricky one is the back leg, because the back leg, when you bend it, you actually have a tendon that comes up here and connects. The hind leg, you don't cut it here. The good joint for the hind leg is actually about 4 inches down. And what's crazy is you don't need a saw or anything. If you find that joint, and you can feel it, like I said, about 4 inches down, but when you bend it, you open up that hide, then you kind of start cutting on the outer here, and all of a sudden it's just going to open up. And what's crazy on this joint, there is no ball joints there. You don't have like a knee right here. Both ends of those bones will be completely flat and smooth. And if you cut on that, and as soon as that opens up and you see that flat, smooth with a tendon in the middle, you are exactly in the right place. And it doesn't take any time at all to pop those. That's one of those things that takes experience with playing with that fat leg. I don't know how many times I broke out my Wyoming saw and said, screw it, I can't find this thing, until I found, because I was always up in here and trying to do it on the hinds. And I think one day I was down here just stripping the hide, cutting around the calf to open that up. And I happened to hit that thing and it just opened up for me. And I'm like, oh, he's got a broken leg. And then it happened on the other side and he's got 2 broken legs. And then I started looking at the anatomy and I'm like, okie silly dokey, I'm a moron. That's a joint right there. So, okay.
That's a
Why?
good tip.
There's actually, I'll have to see if I can find it. Somebody did a video about that not too long ago, and that's what jogged my memory. Was, no, I haven't talked about it with these guys yet. It's one of those things, you get out there and you just get to work and breaking it down, and you just become so automatic. So, okay. Why? Why do elk rub on trees? There's multi-part answers.
Well, they're rubbing their gland on it to put scent on the tree, first of all, one of the things.
Yes. So that is one of the things. The occipital gland. So they can actually, and it's crazy, so that little tear duct underneath their eye on the side of their nose, they can open that thing up to about that big around.
Whoa.
And it is, what's crazy is, I don't have any Europeans in here. These are all just, but if you ever look at a European skull, you will see kind of honeycomb areas in their nose right here where that occipital gland is. And it's crazy. The occipital gland almost looks like an eye socket. It's got almost a tear duct in the middle, but that's not a tear duct. That is a gland duct that they excrete their cologne, their scent. Bulls will do that in their breeding areas, because they are basically marking their territory to let other elk know, this is my bedroom. proceed at your own caution. And that's where I've talked about in the past that trophy blend with their sticks, man, that bull blend that they have, man, you want to fire up a bull, go into his bedroom and rub that trophy blend, bull blend on every tree that he's rubbed on. Oh, that next day he's not going to be a happy camper. It creates some pretty exciting environments, but it's one way that you can go into an area and you can create excitement. Because that dude, the next day, the next couple of days, is going to be looking for that wanker that came in and rubbed on his tree and put his scent all over. And you will know that he's gone through and he touched up. And a lot of times you'll see this in travel corridors where you'll see a rub, then up the corridor, there's another rub, then up the other corridor, there's another rub. He's marking that corridor, and you can stand there and you can look up this travel corridor and you can see the different rubs. And you know exactly that line that he took. Now, once he gets into the bedding area, those rubs become sporadic. They're no longer in a line. They're no longer in that travel corridor. So there's a little tip to tell the difference between a travel corridor rub and a bedding rub. So bedding areas is going to be random and all over. So travel corridors are typically in a straight line. So now the other reason they rub is obviously to shed velvet. So now the reason they shed velvet is obviously to get hard horn and prepared for battle. But the other reason is all summer long during horn growth, there's actually blood being supplied to those growing antlers in the velvet. As it gets close to rut, the blood supply is shut off. And what happens is that velvet starts getting itchy and irritable. So that again lets them know, okay, it's time to rub. It's time to start getting hard horned. You'll see that sometimes younger bulls will rub earlier than older mature bulls. There's not really a set that older bulls go first, then middle-aged class, and then younger class. It's actually all kind of sporadic, and it can vary from area to area and zone to zone within your own state. Some areas will get hard horned faster than other areas. So, okay. Next, why? Why does the rut seem to vary? Why is it not always in the same time frame?
Climatic conditions would be one.
Okay, you're right. And what Larry means by that, if you are in a drier year, so food source is not there, and it could be came off a harsh long winter. The reason the rut could be later is because those cows are not physically fit to breed. They need a little extra time to put on a little bit more weight before they are eligible to breed. It can also be sensing of the hard winter coming up. Because for those of you that have harvested animals over a few years, you ever notice how some years that fat layer is that thick and other years it's only that thick? That was one of the first lessons my grandfather taught me on a buck that he had shot when I was with him, and he's peeling the hide and he was explaining the fat layers. He goes, you can always tell what the upcoming winter is going to be like by the depth of the fat on the animal that you harvested. If it is a very, very thick fat coat or a very, very thick fat layer, good indication that it's going to be a very tough, long winter. If it's a thinner fat layer, it's going to be a milder winter. Greg, what'd you see on your cow?
I felt like it was a fat hide. It was thick. It was easy to grab.
The hide was, but what about the fat layer
underneath? Yeah, there was plenty of fat.
Yeah. A lot of times with the fat layer, I will notice the difference in the fat layer more in deer than I will in elk. So and the reason for that is because typically we're hunting elk during the rut, and the elk and the bulls are expending so much energy, especially if they have a lot of cows. They're not eating very often, so they are really tapping into their fat reserves. That's why when a majority of the cows are bred, that's why that herd bull will break off and he will go into a deep, dark, thick, nasty hole to basically, he's not going to move much either, because at that point he's conserving his energy and trying to put fat reserves back on in anticipation of the upcoming winter. So that answers the next why. Why do herd bulls break off from the herd once most of the cows have been bred? It's because they're basically they're getting into areas to recover from the rut. I mean, a good mature bull with a lot of cows, man, I know there's a lot of videos out there, a lot of videos from Estes Park, Rocky Mountain National Park, and man, you just see those old warriors, and they are just beat up. They're limping, and you can just tell they are dog tired. Because really, you've got 20, 30, 40 cows. You have multiple cows coming into estrus every single day. And this dude is doing his darndest to breed every single one. He just, so between trying to breed every single cow with multiple cows coming in and running off younger, satellite bulls, he expends so much energy. I remember one year I was up. We were all tagged out, and I was just kind of up, just sitting and observing elk. And there was a bull that I had watched during archery season. Kind of tangled horns with him a couple of times, but he was a smart old bull. Never got him in, and I wanted to go back up and spend time and just glass and watch him from a distance. And I remember when the rut ended. Well, it was still going, but a majority of the cows had been bred, and I saw him break off, and he started working towards a thicket, and he got kind of on the edge of the thicket, and that dude laid down, and I mean not laid, just lay on his belly and chew his cud. I mean laid down, chin on the ground, head tilt. I mean the antler tilted his head, and that dude zonked for probably 3 hours. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of bored of watching this dude sleep. But then also I was like, I kind of want to sit here and protect him. I don't want a predator to sneak up and take him down when he's in this tired, weakened state and just trying to get some sleep. So, so I actually sat there and watched him and watched over him the whole time until he actually got up again and worked his way, rest of the way into the thicket. Now, he actually ended up getting shot towards the end of rifle season. Um, had an early snow that year, and that dude just lived in a 30, 40 yard radius area. He had areas where he would lay under the trees, the tree wells where the snow doesn't get. He would just lay in there, and he had a path cleared to water and back. And that was his deal. And the only thing he was eating on was pine needles. So I know the guy that harvested him, and he said he actually had buildup of pine sap on his teeth from scraping bark and from also eating the pine needles. So it's amazing that, these guys go through that much energy expenditure and fat reserve depletion during September, and then they have to roll right into trying to survive a winter. So, and some of those old bulls, man, they'll get up high on the mountain and just not leave. I had another buddy a few years back snowmobiling up 10, 11,000 feet. Came around a corner, and here's a bull just walking really slow on the Grim snowmobile trail. And that bull didn't frickin' care. He didn't have the energy to run. He didn't want to deal with the deep snow. He basically just turned around and looked at him and was like, whatever you're going to do it. Run over me, shoot me, stand there. I don't freaking care because I ain't running. So they shut their machines off, took pictures, and stood there and watched him for a while, and then just let him mosey off back to his little hidey hole.
If you have an elk with a lot of fat on it,
Uh-huh.
and then when you're cutting it up and you have scraps and stuff to make elk burger,
Uh-huh.
and you normally add suet or some kind of fat to it, can you use elk fat?
I wouldn't. So your burger,
Is it still too dry?
it is. I like adding pork fat to
That's
my
what I've
burger.
added. It
So
just came to mind when you were talking about the thickness of the fat and the winter and stuff, and I thought, can that fat be used to make burger?
it's a different kind of fat. God, I don't even know if anybody's ever boiled that fat down to try to make oil for
I've got,
lanterns.
I've got a friend of mine that makes um, an ointment out of it. She's actually from Russia, and she makes this ointment out of animal fat. And I actually have rosacea, and that's the only thing that works on it. I have it all over, and it's gone. I never have a flare up from it.
Huh.
A little bit of it, and she makes it out of the animal fat.
I mean, I'm sure there's medicinal purposes that could be used, but yeah, Greg, I wouldn't recommend mixing it into your grind.
I've never done that. I just was curious. It just came to mind when you were talking about that.
It's something I've never thought of, and I haven't heard any of my butchers talk about it. So,
I think it would make your meat pretty strong.
yeah,
I think you're right.
Plus, it's
I
more carry
I
out.
had no fat added to mine, and the burger is just delicious.
yeah. Everything on an elk is delicious.
It is.
Yeah, I know. I told Liz where I'm taking her on Saturday. Now, mind you, the last 2 weekends, especially last weekend, the weather was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, sunshine, mid 70s. I mean, it was like, okay, we're in the middle of October and it's upper 70s. This is just not right. But we were behind them all the time. Temperature wise is going to be a little bit different this Saturday. So, I mean, like 46. So,
So you've gotten to hunt 2 weekends with Liz, and
yeah, I mean, her season started on the Sunday of that first weekend. And then, yeah, last weekend, Liz and Knox and I were all up there, and Knox was pretty funny. I mean, the only time he was really happy is when we were beating brush and covering miles on our boots. So I don't know if he's too keen on rifle hunting with the sitting and glassing, but he was while we were sitting and glassing, he was picking up sticks that looked like guns, and he was stalking and hunting chipmunks. So, but yeah, where I'm taking her this weekend, I said, well, the good news is there's a lot of bulls in this area. The bad news is you're going to work for it because it's some steep, nasty, stinking country. So I said, the best thing is if we can catch them in first light coming through the Quakey Basin and you can dump them on that side, we're good. But if they get up over the top and get down on that face, yeah, we're in for a long day. But that's all right. We're gonna go give it heck. So, okay. What are some of the whys that? Oh, let me hit one more. So this one is, and I've talked about this before with new hunters and not so experienced elk hunters, that why are they so afraid to shoot a cow or a spike? Why do they have to have this unrealistic expectation that I'm going to go out and kill a monster bull? Because really the best thing you can do as a new elk hunter is take any opportunity you get. It doesn't matter if it's a cow, a spike, a raghorn, because honestly, you need to experience what it's like to draw back, send an arrow, harvest an animal, the emotions that you go through. And you need to experience that. But again, it goes back to today's society and hunting for the acceptance on social media. It's, oh, I don't want to shoot a cow. People on Facebook will think I'm ridiculous, or I don't want to shoot a spike. You need that experience, because I can guarantee if you're a new hunter, it could be a 4x5 raghorn coming in, and if you've never experienced one, you're going to think that dude is the largest freaking elk on the mountain that you've ever seen. And your emotions, your knees are going to be knocking, your heart's going to be pounding, you're going to be shaking. You might even have a hard time drawing your bow, which does happen to people. It's those emotions. But the best thing you can do, and honestly, I mean, you guys have seen some of the racks that I have. I like the experience. I like to eat elk. I'm out there to experience it, fill my tag. Now this year, when I got into that main herd bull, yeah, I got a little focused, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna chase you for the next few days of the season. But that's only because this new area that we're hunting, we had the archery hunt from August 30th to September 30th. Then we had a 9-10 day spike hunt with a rifle. Then we have a 30-day short range weapon hunt for cows in November. So a lot of opportunity to.
What's a short range weapon hunt?
Short range weapon can be a bow, a crossbow, a pistol, a muzzle loader, a shotgun shooting slug, or double-aught buck.
Okay.
So basically anything except for a high caliber rifle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I know Bryce and I were talking about that, and I'm like, oh, what are you going to hunt with? He goes, my bow. He goes, what are you going to hunt with? I'm like, my 12 gauge with slugs. I said, no, I'll hunt with my bow. So, and he's like, well, where are we going? I said, well, let me make a phone call, because I've got a subcontractor on one of my projects that he was very difficult to deal with, and he's been very difficult to deal with for years. And I understand that he's tried calling me a couple of times. We haven't connected, and I heard through the grapevine that he is trying to make amends and extend olive branches. He happens to own a lot of property up in Cascade, right on the edge of Forest Service and timber. So I'm going to tell him, if you want to amend, you need to let Bryce and I come up and kill a cow on your property, and that will amend things. So.
Perfect.
All right. What are some of the whys that you guys might have? A why question, and it doesn't have to be a why question.
A why what? For social media postings?
No.
Why hunt?
No, why do elk do a certain behavior, or why? Yeah.
That's what we're trying to learn.
I know. This is all about elk behavior, so it's kind of a why.
Well, you answered a real serious one for me tonight, because I've always wondered why the bull is always in the back of always in the back when they're traveling. And I was going to actually ask that, but you answered that. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Sniffing them out.
Yeah, it's extremely effective. I mean, they don't have to spend a bunch of energy running around. So, because they have them all in that single file line.
Right in front of them, just, yeah, got it.
Because the tricky thing is then when they catch a little whiff of, oh, there's an estrus scent, then you'll actually see them. They're no longer in the back. Now, actually, they're picking their way up the herd, and that scent's getting a little bit stronger, and he's kind of narrowing down on that one that's putting those pheromones out.
Start doing a little glunking then, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why?
God, I just had another why pop into my question, or pop into my head, and it fleeted from me.
While you're thinking about that, you had a comment about one of the reasons that the bulls rake their velvet off is because they get itchy.
Hmm.
How do we determine they get itchy? Who knows that?
You know, some scientist that actually sat there and studied, or biologist or something. It was in a book that
Yeah,
I read one time, and I
I
kind of
see.
read that, and I'm like, okay, it's bone.
Yeah.
How? But honestly, so when the antler is growing and it's in velvet, it actually is brittle. It's not very soft. So that's why sometimes you'll see an antler come out and all of a sudden it takes a 90-degree turn. That's because that got bumped during velvet.
Yeah,
Hmm.
got damaged. Yep.
So now here's the other thing that's funky too. Why do some bulls grow funky antlers?
Their genes. No.
Uh-uh.
Has to do with the bumping.
Let's do it. Genetics.
Because they're beating them up as they're growing?
Sometimes it can be, well, what if I said it had to do with an injury?
Fighting?
An injury to their hoof.
Ooh.
Now, here's the interesting thing. If they have funky horn on their right side, it was an injury to a hoof on the left side of their body.
Hmm.
I don't know how much validity. It's something that I read on the internet. And you know, if they put it on the internet, it has to be
It
true.
has to be true.
Yeah.
It's like the right side of your brain controls the left side of your body, supposedly. So
Yeah. And that's why they say left-handed people are the only ones that are in the right mind.
Right.
But yes, that is the theory, that it was an injury. Now, the interesting thing is once that injury happens and they start with that funky horn, they will always have a funky horn on that side.
Hmm.
So, and it could be various of different reasons how that injury happened. You know, it could have, you know, cut it on a sharp rock, could have been a predator bite, could have been from fighting during the rut. There's a lot of different things that could have caused that.
Well, if you think about horses, it's really easy for a horse to get an injured hoof.
Right, because they have
It's
they have
really
this
easy.
they actually have the soft pad in the middle of their foot.
Hmm.
So, more useless information.
Michael, I was looking for a definition of a raghorn.
Okay.
Define it for me, because I read everything I could find on it in all of 30 seconds, and I never got the same definition twice.
No, because raghorn is not a true defined term. Raghorn is more of a a slang term that's been given to. Usually, it's a 2.5 to 4.5 year old bull. It's not a mature bull. Um, he's just a raghorn because if you look at their antlers, they kind of look raggedy. You know, they're thin, they're spindly, they're just they're not as impressive as that good classic clean six mature bull. So,
So it
um,
can be a 3x3, a 4x4, for example.
absolutely, yeah,
Mhm.
and it's Sandy. I think where the term came from, it's like, man, look at that raggedy bull or raggedy antlers, and it just got shortened to rag horns. So,
Fair enough.
well, just slang term. You know, one of the coolest racks. You guys know that I'm a funky horn bull, and I didn't shoot this dude, but I ended up with his rack. I had him in, it was like the second or third day of the season. This was years and years ago. And when he was first coming in, looking straight on me, and I was like, ah, it's a spike. And then as he got closer, I was like, no, he's got multiple points. And then he got really close, and I was so mesmerized by watching him. He was a perfectly symmetrical 5x5. And his main beam length was 19 inches long. He was a 5x5 that was only that tall, but he was perfectly symmetrical on both sides. I was just so mesmerized at watching. And funny thing was he was dogging a cow around a bush in heat, and he was just screaming. And I was so mesmerized. I had never seen a rack like that before. I was like, man, that is the coolest thing in the world. And then they ended up wandering off, and I was like, holy crap, I never even drew my bow or anything. Never. And I told myself, okay, if I run into him again, I'm gonna kill him, because that would be that would be a good conversation starter hanging on the wall. I was gonna do a European mount and everything. I wasn't gonna skull cap him. I'm like, that's just you got to keep that European and real, just so people could see the size of his head with this rack. But there was another group of hunters that came in, and one of them actually gut shot him, and we actually ended up finding the bull like a week later after they had gut shot him, because they never recovered him, they never found him, and so I was like, I'm gonna skull cap this dude. And then I started cutting, and as soon as the smell hit me, and I was like, yeah, it's just gonna stay here. We'll see if we can catch him as a deadhead the next year after everything's picked everything off and he's clean. But something packed it off. I never could find it again.
Oh.
But he was one of the coolest bulls. One of the other bulls that lived back in that area too is, again, I don't think this dude was much taller than a Shetland pony. He had extremely short legs, and he didn't run like a normal bull. He kind of did this roundhouse with his legs when he ran. So, and I only saw him one time. He came running by me, and I'm like, what the heck is that? So I started to wonder between that 5x5 and that dude, because this was in a 2-3 year period when I was still fairly new back in this area that I hunted for years. And I started to wonder if there was a nuclear reactor or something back in there that was pumping out some freaks. So
That's funny. Mhm.
That's funny.
all right, guys. Well, we're approaching that 57-minute mark, so we're gonna wrap it up. But yeah, there's a few whys. Hopefully that kind of gave you a little bit more understanding of elk behavior and elk knowledge that you can use and use that out in the field and just kind of grow with.
All righty. Thanks a lot, Michael. Good
Good
job.
info. Good info.
All right. Well, always appreciate you guys tuning in. Always a good time. So next
Good
up,
luck this weekend.
Yeah,
thank
good
you.
luck.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know we're planning on taking the General and parking at the bottom and taking the General up, but the fact that it's going to be a high of 46 for the day, I haven't told her yet that we can access the area with the truck. I might want to tell her that so she can make the decision whether we're going to go in the heated cab of the truck or if we're going to freeze in the General. So, but we'll go give it heck. So, all right, guys, we will be back in 2 weeks. So, as always, keep calling, keep practicing. More importantly, though, have fun. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Will
Thanks a
do.
lot.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody. Have a great night.
Guys.
Good night.